Chapter 9.
You're green to depart, Gunny.
The captain said over the comms.
Good hunting.
Aye, sir. Gunny opened the squad channel. All right, Marines, we are clear to get back to Mira. Are you ready? The comms filled with acknowledgments. Here we go. He reversed the magnetic's polarity, and the skiff rose half a meter from the deck. Went, how's the harness skid?
Good to go, Gunny.
Hoorah, he said with mock excitement. He hit the throttle, and the skiff slowly floated out of S&R Black's cargo bay and into space.
You are clear of the cargo bay, Gunny.
Black said over a block connection.
Good hunting.
Gunny frowned. Had the AI ever called him that? Acknowledged, Black, he said aloud. The thrusters fired a short burst and the skiff accelerated. When it reached 1 meter per second, he used the attitude thrusters to line up the skiff with the first harness point. Squad, prepare for debris. There's a lot of shit flying around up ahead. Keep your heads down and magnetics at full. Understood? The 4 members of his squad bellowed back acknowledgments. He nodded, muted his comm, and mentally prepared himself for the obstacle course ahead. A portion of deck plates as wide as a human and twice the length flipped end over end toward them. Gunny saw it at the last second and changed the skiff's attitude enough to avoid hitting it head on. It scraped against the skiff's gunnel, causing his bones to jar. Just because you couldn't hear impacts in space didn't mean they didn't rattle your ribcage, send bolts of pain down your back, or make it easy to recover from the collision. The impact pushed the skiff off course, and he had to work to get it back on track. His HUD glowed yellow, letting him know they'd suffered an impact. Like I don't already fucking know that, he growled. Thankful once again, he'd muted himself. The last thing the Marines needed to hear were his yells and shouts of panic, or the moments when he gritted his teeth so hard he thought they would explode. The only drawback was the silence from his squad. Without their constant chatter, he was left feeling as though he was piloting an empty, metal brick through darkness, punctuated only by the skiff's lights and the myriad of distant stars. It was the part of piloting a skiff he absolutely loathed. Mira was getting closer. According to his HUD, a mere 100 meters separated them from the dead ship. The clouds of metal were thicker now, but less dangerous. Tiny chips struck his visor and his suit, bouncing harmlessly off the armored material to float back into space at a different trajectory. Focused on piloting and navigating, he barely noticed. The only saving grace to this little shit show was that he hadn't seen a corpse. Yet. The idea of finding Callie Moore's body and/or the members of her squad floating dead in space gave him shivers. But there was no sign of their skiff or their suits. Maybe they were safe inside Mira after all, although considering what had happened earlier in the day, he wasn't sure that was possible. Worry about that later, he said aloud. 50 meters. 30, 20. He cut the skiff's velocity and drifted at 1 meter per second toward the target. A growing green rectangle appeared in his HUD. They were almost there. He watched the video feed from the skiff's bottom as the enormous hull came into view. Flying above the large, long ship gave him an instant of vertigo before his mind finally put it in perspective. You're just landing on a huge pad, he said aloud. Nothing but a goddamn metal landing pad. Touching the thrusters, he slowly lowered the skiff until it floated a meter above the giant metal hull. Blowing out a sigh of relief, he engaged the magnetics, brought the skiff to a halt, and reactivated his comms. Enjoy the trip, Marines?
That was awesome!
Copenhaver squealed through the mic.
Good flying, Gunny.
Went said. Stow it, Gunny said. Went, how's the skid?
Harness intact and doesn't appear to be damaged. I think we're good to go, Gunny.
Good. Copenhaver, you and Murdoch are a team. Went, you take like. I want a clean rollout of the harness. If you have questions, ask now or suffer my boot in your ass later. None of the Marines said a word. Get to it.
Aye, Gunny.
The Marines mag-walked out of the skiff, their tethers dangling behind them, until they reached the hull. Once there, they disconnected the tethers and Gunny rolled them up. As the squad reached the skid and began preparing the harness, Gunny took the line gun from the front compartment and mag-locked it to his back, leaving his hands free. He stood from the command chair and watched his squad open the skid's side portals. Wint walked to the embedded control panel, sent a series of commands, and Atmos steel pythons slammed into the hull. The skid was the first anchor point for the harness. When they were finished, the carbon nanotube webbing would stretch to 8 more anchor points, each 1/4 kilometer from the skid. Once the spindle and its lines were in place, the crew would connect S&R Black to the spindle, and with any luck, she'd tow the derelict without completely ripping either ship to pieces. Luck. Luck was not a word Gunny liked. Luck was fickle. It could save you one moment by killing your mate, and then kill you too to save your enemy. Luck didn't know ethics, morals, or empathy. Luck was a void-hearted monster you couldn't count on or hope for. Luck was little more than a trap for those who had no confidence in what they were doing. Instead of counting on Lady Luck to help them out, they'd do the job and do it right. And Gunny would make sure each of his Marines did just that.
Talby to Gunny, over.
Gunny here. Go ahead, sir.
I'm here for support. Let me know where you need me.
Aye, sir. Gunny checked his block. He tagged Copenhaver and Murdoch as a team. Do me a favor and watch those two, sir. I'll keep an eye on Like and Wint.
Copy that, Gunny. How's the hull? Any more of that liquid shit?
No, sir, Gunny said, but we haven't really walked the area yet. I'll get as much information as I can and mark everything I see.
Copy, Gunny.
He felt as though Talby was going to say something else, but the lieutenant didn't. Gunny wondered what Talby had seen at the bow, if anything, but that could wait. Until they cleared the area around the skiff and started to place the harness, it wouldn't matter. Mira had to move, or that KBO could smash her to bits. If that happened, Kalimura and her squad would be dead anyway. Gunny scanned the 10-meter area around the skiff. He saw a few pine cones, but apart from the strange objects, he found nothing else. That was the good news. The bad news was Mira's belly would be a nightmare of pine cones, the strange liquid, and compounded by serious damage to the deck plating and superstructure. At least we start with the easy shit, he thought. Wint and Like began unspooling the first of the 1/4-meter diameter lines. Wint showed him how to control the slack and CG, as well as how to pull against the spool's friction. Gunny listened to their comm chatter and then switched to the other team. PFC Copenhaver had obviously studied up on the harness. Murdoch, on the other hand, was damn near useless. Gunny wanted to jump out of the skiff, mag-walk over, and kick the Marine in the ass. But that could wait until they were back aboard S&R Black. For now, he just had to grit his teeth and curse with his mic muted. When each team of 2 started their mag-walks, Gunny brought up the video recording from Talby's recon of the bow. Splitting his attention between the squad cams and the captured images wasn't all that difficult. Hell, he'd done it so many times in combat, it was second nature. The new damage to the bow was extensive. When the recordings of the bridge recon filled the video window, he frowned, rewound a few seconds, and watched at 5 frames per second. After 10 seconds or so, he paused the video. What he'd seen at full speed had been what he thought he saw. Death. Through the unshuttered bridge window, he saw heads and limbs floating amongst the wreckage of computers and controls. It looked as if a bomb had gone off on the bridge, taking everyone and everything with it. What the fuck happened here? It was the question, wasn't it? Each frame showed more carnage, more objects bouncing. The images showed it all in gory detail. Frozen ice shards of blood swirled around the inside of the bridge like crimson snow. Did everyone die? He wondered. The aft section of the ship had suffered severe damage. Engineering looked like a nuke had gone off and shattered multi-meter sheets of Atmos steel like fine china hitting a metal floor. The midships were damaged, as were the foredecks, but they hadn't been subjected to the same amount of abuse. But the bridge? How the hell did they manage to blow up the bridge? He shook his head. None of this made sense. Nothing about Mira made any goddamn sense.
Gunny?
Wint's voice broke through his thoughts. Go!
We're about 10 meters from the target.
Acknowledged, Wint. What's your status? Gunny peeked at the Marine's cam view. The feed bounced up and down as Wint walked, but without the nausea-inducing jitter from the other Marines' cams. What he saw was undamaged deck plates and a lack of debris. He checked Mira's external schematics, the ones the trio had sent, but couldn't find any idea of what might be directly below the spot.
We have a taut line, and I should be able to shoot the piton in a minute or two. No acid, Gunny. No pine cones. This area is clean and clear.
Copy. Stay on objective.
Aye, Gunny.
He switched to Copenhagen's feed and immediately regretted it. Her movements weren't nearly as smooth and immediately made him want to retch. He closed his eyes, hoped his bio-nannies knew what to do, and then opened them again. The movements were still jittery, but his stomach had settled. Thankfully. Puking inside a pressure suit was no fun. He knew from first-hand experience that you may coat your visor, but your HUD was your eyes anyway. The worst parts were the smell that could stay with you for hours or days, and the sensation of hot, thick bile and unprocessed food on your skin. The view continued to sway, but he focused on the upper portion. Her suit lights illuminated a few divots from micro-impact damage as well as blemish-free decking. As long as they didn't come across the acid or pine cones at the other target locations, placing the harness would be a breeze. Copenhagen, I show you less than 2 meters from your target. That about right?
Aye, Gunny. Should have it done in 2 minutes. Over.
Copy, PFC. Let me know when you're finished.
Aye,
she said. He panned his helmet cam a few meters in front of the skiff and increased the magnification. Several micro-impact divots scored the decking surface. Keeping the image magnified, he slowly turned his head. Several more showed up in his lights. Not localized, he said to himself. Mira must have flown into a shatterstorm of sorts. Bet the entire top of the ship has the impact damage. Lost in his thoughts, he nearly flinched when Copenhagen spoke.
Gunny, Murdoch and I have the piton down. Sending telemetry.
Before she even finished her sentence, Gunny's HUD lit with a stream from her camera. The mounting point of the harness had shot through the harness line, activating the nanotubes, the nannies, and bringing their Hive Mind online. The Hive Mind sent him a status message. He grinned. Good job, Copenhagen. Get back here and get another line.
Aye, Gunny.
He quickly switched channels. Wind. Status.
Securing now. Should have a connection in 4 or 5 seconds.
Before he had time to finish exhaling his next breath, the Hive Mind squirted another message. 2 lines were down and connected. The more lines they activated, the more intelligent and organized the Nanny Collective would become. Each line could alter nanotube shape, rigidity, and tension based on environmental information. While a single line's hive had enough intelligence to handle securing a craft as large as a shuttle, a large harness was comparable to a non-sentient AI. The hive's only reason to exist, however, was to hold on, hold together, and adapt to stresses and strains affecting its initial shape. Once they had all the lines down, S&R Black could change attitude and thrust without the harness ripping itself, or the ship, to pieces. At least, that was the theory. He didn't trust the damn things, even after using them for several years. It seemed to him that trusting the safety of an entire ship to a barely functional AI was madness. Then again, the bio-nannies worked in much the same way. Each nanny knew to do its own job, but the more nannies in the body, the more likely they were to change specializations when necessary, as well as more intelligently diagnose damage to cellular tissue. Went, I show green. Get your asses back here and let's do it again.
Aye, Gunny.
Went said. For the first time in a long time, the Marine actually sounded both respectful and professional. Maybe someone fucking dying finally got through to you, he said to himself. At least something good might come from Nero's death. And that of Callimora's squad. He shook away the last thought and watched the feeds as his Marine slowly returned to the skid.